seconds to let those that are trying to log in to the webinar, give them some time. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association's webinar series in partnership with the USDA Rural Development. Today is the second session of this three-part series, Adding Value to Native Agricultural Products. This series is also paid in partnership with the Native American Agricultural Fund, NAF. NAF provides grants to eligible entities to support Native farmers and ranchers. My name is Bianca Mitchell. I am from the Pueblo of Acoma here in New Mexico, and I'm the Education Manager for IANTA. IANTA provides technical assistance and training to tribal nations and Native-owned enterprises engaged in cultural tourism, hospitality, and recreation. IANTA's mission is to define, introduce, grow, and sustain American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian tourism that honors traditions and values. Save the date for IANTA's 24th American Indian Tourism Conference, October 24th through the 27th of this year at Harris Resort, Southern California, hosted by the Rancon Tribe of Lucenio Indians. Registration is now open and sponsorship opportunities are available. We also have our professional certificate program in cultural heritage tourism, which begins this fall in 2022 in partnership with the George Washington University's International Institute of Tourism Studies. Explore the fundamentals of tribal tourism planning in this professional certificate program. This online program brings together industry experts who help students explore the importance of including authentic Native American cultural experiences in their tourism planning. The course will begin September 12th through November 6th of this year. Registration deadline is August 22nd. Please visit our website at ianta.org to learn more about our education program offerings. As a reminder, please put your questions in the Q&A and chat, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. Right now, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Ted Bello, Tribal Relations Team Lead and Tribal Coordinator for the United States Department of Agriculture. Ted?
Thanks, Bianca. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. My name is Ted Bulow, and I am the Tribal Relations Team Lead for Rural Development, as well as the Tribal Coordinator. I live and work in the Denver, Colorado area, so that's where I'm joining you from today. First, wanted to thank the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association for working on this webinar series with us and for being great partners throughout the year and helping get the word out about USDA programs in general and rural development program opportunities in specific. Also want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join today, and for our external Native organization panelists. Much appreciated that you're willing to join us and talk about the resources you bring to the table. And finally, a big thanks to our USDA sister agencies for joining in the first session and today's session. And we look forward to session 3, which will deal more with agritourism and tourism opportunities specifically in August. So as you can see, we've got a host of wonderful panelists today. Pretty jam-packed agenda. We're going to spend the first hour hearing from the folks that you see listed on the screen here. And then we'll have about 30 minutes reserved for questions and answers and discussion at the end of the webinar. So first, we're going to hear from Kiera Johnson-Reyes. He's the Technical Assistance Director for the Intertribal Ag Council. Then we'll hear from Carly Griffith-Hotfed. She's from the Indigenous Food and Ag Initiative at the University of Arkansas School of Law. I think we're going to be hearing from Sandy Martini, who will be pinch hitting for Tony today from the Native American Ag Fund. Then we'll switch into USDA mode, and we'll hear from Juliana Arnett, who's a Senior Marketing Specialist for the USDA's Ag Marketing Service. Then we'll hear from Tracy Smith, Business and Loan and Grant Analyst from USDA Rural Development. And last but definitely not least, we'll get a commercial from the National Agricultural Statistical Service at USDA about the upcoming ag census. Nick Streff, the regional director, is joining us today from Lincoln, Nebraska. So then we'll switch into questions and answers at that point. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the presentation over to Kier Johnson-Reyes. Kier?
Oi, Wajaji, Kier Johnson-Reyes. Hello, everybody. I'm a member of the Osage Nation. I work for the Intertribal Agriculture Council as the Technical Assistance Director. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Let's see, I've been with IAC for 8 years. Have a background in federal Indian law, traditional foods, mixed vegetable production, and education and outreach. Next slide. So IAC's mission is to pursue and promote the conservation, development, and use of our agricultural resources for the betterment of our people. We cover several mission areas: legal and policy, professional development, food systems, communications, economics, and conservation and production innovation. And we've been around since 1987 and worked on every single USDA farm bill since the early 1990s to support growing access to USDA programs and resources throughout Indian country. Next slide. So some of our statistics, these are averages. As many of you all know, there's around 80,000 tribal producers that are tracked through the NAS agricultural census process. And we do a lot of work with between 12 and 15,000 contacts throughout the country each year, and work specifically with tribal producers and tribal governments, as well as a host of partners. We facilitate regional events, national events. We bring in millions of dollars through domestic and international sales for tribal food companies. And our goal is to really expand our conservation, technical assistance, and regenerative ag practice and training modalities to over 1 million acres of ag lands throughout Indian country. And we're working towards that goal every year. Next slide. So IAC's programs cover the gamut from youth and professional development, natural resources, American Indian foods, policy, and government relations and communications, and technical assistance network program, which I direct, really is a linkage to the on-the-ground capacity and direct informing of the other program areas. We do a lot of the outreach across the programs, and then the capacity and awareness of tribal producers and tribal governments' needs around agriculture and food systems to our important policy and government relations work. And next slide. So a couple of key terms I'll just mention right out the gate. When IAC talks about producers, it's a term that we utilize to describe a spectrum of entities across Indian country. It's not limited to these, but this generally means individual producers, tribes themselves, tribal for-profit, nonprofit corporations, cooperative organizations, collectives, associations, etc. So any of these entities in Indian country that provide direct and intentional land and waterway management for food, fiber, medicines, and other cultural products. Agriculture, we utilize that term to, of course, encompass farming, ranching, fishing, hunting, foraging, growing, harvesting, community agriculture, traditional seed propagation, preservation, on down the list. So we really take the guidance of the tribal communities and tribal clients that we work with to inform IAC of their priorities around food and agriculture systems and their priorities to grow resiliency within those systems. Next slide. So what is the TA network? So the TA network is funded by the USDA Office of Tribal Relations. It's a national network that provides direct assistance to USDA programs and services through outreach, eligibility, application support, contract implementation guidance as needed. And so our network is comprised of technical assistance specialists, formerly on staff with IEC. Our network extends to a host of partners and federal and non-federal entities across the country that also make up a very far-reaching support network for tribal food systems. TAs also leverage these types of partnerships, describing support project development, government-to-government relations, and focus on resource identification to meet individual producer and tribal community priorities relating to agriculture, land management, community development. Next slide. So you can find this list at indianag.org, the word Indian and then AG like agriculture.org under the Technical Assistance Network tab. But just to say that we have representation across Indian country and we're continuing to grow. Next slide. So we're expanding. This little map is encompassing of our current network, but then also where we'll be moving in the months ahead. And so we're continuing to increase our capacity to provide that direct on-the-ground assistance. Next slide. One of the things that we're really proud of to be a part of with the other technical service providers is the recent meat and poultry processing capacity technical assistance program. We're one of, about 6 entities, and I want to make note that 2 of the 6 entities are, tribal, and so USDA has not really convened a technical service provider cohort of this capacity in recent memory, and so it's very unique and wonderful to be a part of, and we're just appreciative that the prioritization has really been placed on Indian country to provide these essential services and capacity to really grow much needed sector, which is small and medium scale meat processing infrastructure in Indian country. So the bullets at the top there of the slide really detail out how we can offer assistance. And what's also unique is that, this is operating under a multi-year agreement with opportunity to continue this great work, possibly beyond that. And so tribes and individual entities that are interested in exploring or navigating, opportunities around economic development and, the enhancement of, tourism opportunities, through the featuring of local food products, can gain very comprehensive assistance through this network. Next slide. So American Indian Foods Program is another of our programs. And what I want to share about this is that this is the program where ready for market tribal food products and those companies can gain domestic and international market access through a suite of amazing opportunities offered by the American Indian Foods Program. So the primary areas are their export readiness programming funded by the Foreign Ag Service, as well as Native Food Connection, which is a domestic marketing program that was established during the pandemic to help those tribal food companies who were marketing internationally to pivot and respond to domestic needs. And it's continued to grow since that point. Native Made and Produced trademark label, and we have a recently established program for a Regen Nation seal and pledge. Next slide. Great. Keep an eye on my time. So the Native Made produced by American Indians trademark is monitored and marketed by Intertribal Agriculture Council. It's a trademark that certifies authenticity. We're a third-party authenticator of tribally produced food products and other products that are able to be, carrying of this label. So to qualify, The user must be a federally recognized tribal member, tribal entity, Alaska Native village, defined by law, controlling at least 51% share interest. So more information can be found there at the bottom, that website. Next slide. So a little bit of history quickly on the trademark. As you can see, it's been established since 1993. It was really at the forefront of food labeling in contemporary times here. So we're really proud of that. Next slide. And as mentioned, this is the Regen Nation seal example, and it provides tribal producers an opportunity to receive marketing enhancement by indicating that their practices on the ground are meeting a threshold of constituting regenerative ag practices and moving in that direction. Next slide. Our export program, was developed, in 1998. It really covers export readiness, trade shows and missions, promotional opportunities internationally, and then the work to promote trade through expanding markets. And there's a very comprehensive curriculum attached to this, and we're really proud of the work that's been done in this area. Next slide. And on the domestic marketing side, we're doing a whole lot of that education outreach, a lot of capacity development, supporting the identification of strategic domestic trade shows and looking for opportunities to further and develop retail and distributor relationships. Upcoming events that are planned are listed there below. Next slide. And real quick, so this particular program has its own website, which comes with a producer directory that's always growing and evolving. And so definitely check out indianagfoods.org as well. And next slide. Thank you very much. And I'll be around for questions a little bit later. Thank you.
Thank you, Keir. I was going to do a little cross-advertising plug for you. I wanted to thank you and your team, especially the technical assistance team, for working with us in the past on doing a number of webinars on RD's program, specifically the Value-Added Producer Grant program. So I'm going to drop your YouTube channel in the chat. There's lots of information up there on other USDA programs, webinars, some stuff from their latest conference you can check out. So I just wanted to give you another thanks for all the collaboration over the years. It's much appreciated. So Carly, I believe you're up next.
Thanks, Ted. Osio Nagata, Carly Hotbed, Dagwadoa, Chichalagi, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Jugega. Hello, everyone. My name is Carly Hotbed. I am from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation, living on the Muskogee Nation Reservation. I'm very excited to join you today and share a little bit about what the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative is, the services that we offer, and how those can be leveraged to develop value-added agricultural opportunities, especially through the context of a tourism lens. So we were founded at the University of Arkansas School of Law in 2013 by Dean Emeritus Stacy Leeds, who was the first Native American woman to be the Dean of a law school, and our founding director, Janie Sims Hipp, who has since gone on to be the first executive director of the Native American Ag Fund, but has since been tapped to serve as the general counsel of USDA. So we've had some pretty strong powerhouse support since the beginning. And that has really supported our mission, which is to enhance the health and wellness in tribal communities by really advancing healthy food systems, diversified economic development, all through the lens and through the context of our cultural food traditions in Indian country, because we know you can't ignore any one of those facets. It all needs to be integrated and work together for the benefit of the community. Next slide. So when we work in Indian country, we really focus on putting the tribal sovereignty and food sovereignty. That means that our efforts go towards providing strategic legal analysis, policy research, and educational resources to really empower Indian country through food sovereignty, agriculture, and economic development. The resources that we developed are intended to help tribes and individual producers go to the next step from wherever they're at, whether it's a value-added opportunity, a startup opportunity, taking a look at policy development, or providing opportunities to learn more about what opportunities and resources exist or available beyond the tribal context that they might be able to leverage. We also partner with the Intertribal Ag Council, the National Congress of American Indians, and the Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux community to run the Native Farm Bill Coalition. So a lot of the work that is done with regard to policy and research in the context of Farm Bill and making it more inclusive for Indian country. We do a lot of the research and nerdy lawyer work that comes along with taking those priorities and feedback that we hear from Indian country stakeholders and doing the work to translate that into policy language and statutory support. And in addition to some of the legal work, we have this slide here in front that talks about what resources we have. So I already visited about the Native Farm Bill Coalition, but we also have a model tribal food and ag code, comprehensive set of food and ag laws that's completely customizable. In addition to having the model code, we provide consultation with tribes who are interested in adopting that. And that could be helpful in the context of sourcing and procurement, occupying regulatory space, ensuring that your tribal food cultures are protected, especially through a data sovereignty lens. And there's quite a few other titles. So anything that would necessarily touch on or be involved in a tribal agriculture or food system, we try to provide some opportunity to have that codified and have that opportunity for your tribe to really cover those bases and make sure that you are engaging in the regulation and process of your own tribes rather than allowing external encroaching jurisdictions to be overly influential in that. We also provide resources for Native food safety through the Tribal Food Safety Alliance. We are coming up this month on our Native Youth and Food and Ag Leadership Summit to get youth trained, and also provide additional resources in how to cultivate tribal food sovereignty, how to scale up your food and ag operations. And then we have some work that we've done in tribal hemp, especially with regard to the required plan that tribes need to develop and submit to the Secretary for approval in order to legally produce hemp on the reservation and tribal community. And we also have resources available for food security and access. So all of these things are available and tools that we've developed and use to inform tribes and organizations about their opportunities and really tailor those resources to meet the tribe's needs, wants, and best fit for their community and best fit for their goals and outcomes. Next slide. So we use the National Census of Agriculture quite a bit. The most recent data we have is from 2017, so we're very much looking forward to the 2022 data coming out, and that just closed last month for surveys, so we're hopeful to see that data compiled quickly and get some updates here. But we know from the 2017 census that American Indian and Alaska Native farms make up 3% of all the farms in the United States, and the value of products of American Indian and Alaska Native producers sold, it increased almost 10% from $3.24 billion in 2012 to $3.5 billion in 2017. I would expect to see an even greater increase over the next ag census period, just considering how much more inclusive reporting is probably going to be coming up, but we're also seeing a lot more people become involved in agriculture. So that's pretty exciting to see the numbers of total farms increase as we go along, because that's not necessarily something that's common across other demographics. Next slide. So where do you start? I mentioned the ag census because I think it's really critical to take a look at that. In addition to giving Native specific information, there's also mapping that occurs to show just exactly where tribal producers are located at. There's two main concentrations. The two highest concentrations are the area overlapping Navajo Nation and then Eastern Oklahoma. But there are other concentrations of tribal producers in other areas. It can help your tribe and your strategic planner get a look and identify where are we at, who do we have, what are we producing, what's common in the area, and how can we best leverage that to support the goals that we have when it comes to value-added agriculture. And so when you're talking about where to start, you want to start with what you have and center your goals and your assets and your outcomes around that. So when you're looking at where to start, take a look at what you have. What are your assets? What's your culture? And who are your people? Who's engaging? Who's working? Not necessarily just from an individual producer side, but also who are your employees and who's working with you. So getting a look and getting a handle on your inventory assets, your cultural presence, what enterprises you currently have, who's participating, what markets are available to you, what your individual history is, what interests are within the community, if there's any movements that are going on right now that you could leverage for the benefit that's a fit for what you want to do. And then taking a look at development and personnel. So after kind of identifying that and getting an idea of what your goal is when you're working towards value-added agriculture, from a tribal government perspective, there's a few different ways to approach that. I always encourage tribes to start with the lowest hanging fruit. What's your internal policy? Do you have internal directives about your tribal government programs and enterprises and how those can work together for the benefit of value-added agriculture? And we're talking about value-added agriculture. One of the baselines that we discuss is, that take whatever it takes to take that raw product to the next step, as far as, say you're producing corn. What does it take to harvest? What does it take to shuck it, to desilk it, to take the corn off the cob, to freeze it, to package it, label it, process it, market and distribute it? All of those things are a component of a value-added process within that food development and supply chain. So any intervention that takes that raw product to the next level is what we're talking about for value-added agriculture. But value-added agriculture isn't just a mechanical process. It isn't just an actual physical act that needs to happen. It can also be the context. It can also be labeling. It can also be marketing. It can be the inherent added value of that product the inherent value added nature of the product because it's a traditional or cultural food source, because it's produced by Indigenous producers. That can be a value added opportunity that makes that product more marketable in certain scenarios. There are some people that are specifically looking for opportunities to acquire or purchase or support or consume Indigenous produced products or culturally relevant food products. So taking a look at what your internal policies are, are you doing procurement and sourcing from a local perspective? What are you doing to transfer dollars from, tribal government budgetary cycles into the community or into your enterprises to really generate the volume demand that might be necessary to make that opportunity economically sustainable? You also want to take a look at how to cooperate with shared staff or strategic planning. And then vertical integration is a really big component. So when you're looking, and additionally, external policy is going to be critical as well. And I think this is one of the most important things that tribes can do. How can you support your tribal producers via resource sharing, training, sourcing collaboration, and regulatory oversight? Tribes are very well suited to occupy a space that can provide value-added opportunities for individual producers. A lot of times the equipment associated with the value-added ag opportunity can be cost prohibitive for individual producers. But if a tribe has an enterprise that's already doing some of that work and would benefit from that, the excess capacity within that value-added equipment could be opened up for individual producers to be able to leverage for their benefit, either at a free or low cost. And then interfacing with external tribal policy. That can look like leveraging federal programs and funding, working with regional economic development initiatives, or even other local community opportunities, or looking at private funders like the Native American Ag Fund to support that work. Next slide. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly because I know I'm short on time, but these are just some examples of how a tribe can engage in opportunities that will increase value and capacity. So if your goal is to feed people, you can expand your nutrition programs or provide additional food sourcing through those. There's a few other opportunities available. We're happy to discuss those with you further. Offering your foods through your tribal programs like schools, daycares, Head Starts, and health and community programs, or even retail outlets. These can be particularly attractive. Next slide. If your goal is to generate revenue, you can take a look at larger scale operations. That can be good for tribes with land resources, good labor pool, the ability to fund your startup and tolerate a longer break-even period. And if you have an identified market for product sales, and that opportunity for a value-added component can be really critical as well. Next slide. I think one of the biggest things that tribes would benefit from, especially from a tourism perspective, is how to vertically integrate the products that you're currently producing. And I think Quapaw Nation is a good example of that. They have leveraged their coffee operation and serve that within their casino. They also source from their beef operations, that they have a processing facility that they run through and then provide that beef to their resort restaurants there in the casino as well. That's just one example. There can be other retail outlets and opportunities. Some tribes that have meat processing facilities have a retail opportunity directly on site. So theoretically, your cattle can be born, grown, produced, processed, and sold within a very small radius. I know at Muscogee Creek Nation, within, I believe, 20 miles total. That has a very low carbon footprint and can be really attractive for some of our cultural values. Some other options are, displays for visitors, seasonal markets, you pick fields and orchards, and we can help you develop the policy necessary to make those things work in a way to best fit for your tribe. Next slide. Here's my contact information. We're happy to reach out and support any work that you do and provide consultation from a policy perspective, but also integrate that with enterprise development opportunities. Our website, I just dropped that in the chat, so please feel free to check that out, and looking forward to questions at the end of this presentation. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Carly. Appreciate all the education and technical assistance that you provide, as well as the advocacy that IFAI does. You've helped improve USDA programs for Indian country for quite some time, and tribes in Alaska as well. So that work is also greatly appreciated. Sandy Martini, I believe you're up next. Are you on the line?
Thanks, Ted. I'm here.
Hi there. Thanks for pinching in for Tony today.
Yes, anytime for Tony. Good morning, everybody. My name is Sandy Martini. I'm Associate CEO here at the Native American Agriculture Fund. And today I'm sitting in for Tony as she tries to juggle a lot of different meetings and requests. And this is one that she had to not be able to attend. So sorry about that, but I do have all the information, and looking forward to talking to everybody. I am a member of the Cherokee Nation. I'm calling in today from Arkansas. I am also a rancher with a cow-calf operation here. And my background is in risk management education. I spent 15 years at the University of Arkansas providing technical assistance and education to farmers and ranchers, most importantly, underserved farmers and ranchers, including Native. And I'm not sure if you all have our slide deck. If you don't, that's okay.
We don't, but I can stop sharing. You can share the slides if you'd like.
Oh, no, that's okay. That's okay. I can just talk through it.
Okay.
NAF is a private charitable trust, and we came into an existence in 2018. And NAF is a result of litigation between producers and USDA. And we were put into existence to provide funding to organizations that would benefit Native farmers and ranchers. So specifically, NAF supports Native farmers and ranchers in the areas of business assistance, agricultural education, technical support, and advocacy services. And the entities that NAF provides funding to and awards include nonprofits with a 501c3, educational organizations, that includes K through 12, higher ed, TCUs, tribal college universities, which are also 1994s, any 1862 land grant university that has history of working with the Native farmers and ranchers. CDFIs is another entity that we serve. and tribal governments in state and federally recognized tribes, and also instrumentalities of tribes. Currently, NAF has a total of 324 projects out there in the works. 66 of those are unique grantees that are working in climate smart and sustainable ag space. With that 62 unique grantees, there's 82 of those projects in that space. NAF is currently building out our webpage to include a resource page for each individual grantee that we work with, where that grantee will then have all of the resources that and links pointing to the resources that they provide using NAF funding available to Native farmers and ranchers and any other organization that wants to have access to those resources. So that is in the work. We just now have projects that are coming to an end. So our first round of funding went out in 2019. And then of course, COVID hit in 2020 and things slowed down. So a lot of the projects were not able to go at the pace that they wanted to go. And NAF tried to stay flexible through all that. And they're just now finishing up. So as these projects finish, you will see them posted to our webpage. So I encourage everybody to visit the NAF website regularly. Yes, we will put that in the chat box for you. I have a couple links that I'll share after this, but we encourage you to visit our webpage and access those resources. We will be adding to it all the time. We also have a newsletter that goes out, I believe, bi-weekly at this time. And you will also see a grantee corner in that newsletter where we highlight projects that are going on across Indian country. We are a national organization, so we fund entities across the nation, of course, including Hawaii and Alaska. Let's see, I talked about our projects. We also do a lot of program support in addition to our individual grant awards. And some of importance there is we're working right now with national entities on co-op development in Indian country. Where we put on a webinar last summer, and I believe those webinars can be found on our website. You can still access those. And then this year, we are actually about to start taking applications for a cooperative training school. So if anybody's interested in cooperatives, please reach out, please get in touch and keep an eye on our newsletter and our social media for those applications. They're set to go out. We are working closely right now with the Native Veteran Coalition, and we're about to wrap up an initial survey to see what are the needs of Native veterans right now, and then how we can plug them into our agriculture systems, where they can fit in and how they can fill gaps and voids that we have out there. And so we should be posting results of that survey soon, and then working with building up that space. The other outside programming that we assist with is with the CDFIs. We are assisting several different organizations with providing training on agriculture lending and helping the CDFIs to build capacity and scale up their lending resources and their staff to be able to assist any Native farmer and rancher that wants to get into business or build equity in the business that they already have, or just scale up and grow their business. So be watching for CDFI trainings and how you can get involved there. NAF also works closely with helping organizations leverage funds. So if you're interested in us assisting with leveraging, where we can help put you in touch with other philanthropy out there that is interested in funding Native Ag, reach out to us, let us know you're interested, and we can loop you in and link you with those entities that are looking to fund. And there's a lot of them out there right now. So leveraging funds. We also have a hosted webinar series that it ran for a full year, and we've got all the recorded webinars on our website right now. And the title was Building Native Ag, and it goes from the beginning to the end of what do you need to do? How do you find funding? What are your options out there? It goes deep into the meat processing if you're interested in that. So that was another program support project that we do have as a resource that you can access. We normally award anywhere from 10 million to 20 million a year in funding. For example, last year we awarded 54 organizations for a total of 14 million in awards. We do have an annual RFA. It just closed. Okay, I see I have 1 minute. I do want to just say on our website, we have a document that's titled Reimagining Native Food Economies. I encourage everyone to read that document and see where you fit in. It's every part of the food system imagined in 9 hubs across the nation, agritourism, value added, anything you can think of that is involved with native food and agriculture and farmers and ranchers. So read that vision document, see where you fit in. Please reach out to us anytime. Our contact, we're always available. And I'll just wrap it up there. Thank you all.
Thank you, Sandy. Appreciate your work and appreciate you joining today. It's been wonderful to watch the Native American Ag Fund expand from a not so well, a terrible chapter in USDA's history, I'll call it that. And now seeing the types of organizations and tribes you're able to co-fund and fund on your own, and watching all of the organizations benefit from the grant funding has been wonderful to witness. So thank you for your continued work and efforts. It's much appreciated. Next up, we have, we're going to switch gears. We're going to go into our USDA portion of the presentation. So Juliana, I believe you're next from Ag Marketing Service.
Great, thank you for having me today. So I am Juliana Arnett. I'm the Local and Regional Food Systems Senior Marketing Specialist for USDA's Agriculture Marketing Service. I have a unique role here, and that is I support interagency coordination around local and regional food systems across the department, and I'm also available to consult with agencies and offices, including Agriculture Marketing Service, on issues related to local and regional foods. You might be asking why there is a position to support interagency coordination, why that's necessary. At the USDA, as you likely know, our agencies and offices have distinct roles in carrying out our mission to provide economic opportunity, promote agriculture production that nourishes and preserves natural resources. Agriculture Marketing Service, or AMS, as I'll refer to it, is the agency primarily responsible for developing international and domestic marketing opportunities. So we think a lot about, how do producers get that product out to potential consumers. And this includes, when we say domestic, local and regional food systems. Next slide. So the USDA has really been supporting local and regional food systems for quite some time. Support has been steadily building since the 1970s. The interest really came in around direct markets and local regional food systems as a response to concerns that farmers were receiving a shrinking share of the food dollar. You may have heard in mainstream, food systems, producers typically receive about 14 to 16 cents on the dollar, where in local and regional food markets, they can receive anywhere as up to 7 times that amount. So support for local and regional food systems has been growing as a vehicle to increase financial returns for farmers and also improving the quality of food for consumers and lowering the cost. And while I often refer to local and regional food systems, I think, in context of today, really thinking about food sovereignty in your communities as well. So while local and regional food systems have historically been supported by our Farm Bill, Child Nutrition Reauthorization Act, and USDA structural changes, the newest era has really been the USDA Food Systems Transformation Framework, which you probably heard the Secretary share about in the last month. This framework really outlines plans for a fair, competitive, distributed, and resilient food system, and this includes development for more and better market opportunities for small and mid-sized producers. So this is really where AMS comes in, and also where local and regional foods comes in as well. Next slide. So at the USDA, AMS plays a very unique role, similar, to my position. We serve as a convener internally and externally of food system stakeholders related to local and regional foods. We also serve as a researcher and data provider, a technical assistance provider, funder, and also a food buyer. And so I'm going to give a broad overview of our programs that are available, but then happy to answer any more questions folks might have in the Q&A. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we convene both internally and externally. So at the USDA, I support a working group that spans over 15 USDA agencies, including some of those on today's call, really working on supporting employee education, networking, and coordination and collaboration, and trying to strengthen and institutionalize our USDA programs and services for local and regional food system stakeholders. We also serve as a convener for networks and collaborators for local and regional foods that work externally. So one project I wanted to highlight briefly is our local and regional foods response to COVID. This is a project that was launched during the pandemic, which really brought together universities and community of practice coordinating organizations, including a couple on today's call that I wanted to mention is the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative had participated in this group, and we also have participation by NAFTMA, the International Agritourism Association. So what was important about this project is, knowing that there's many different players and market channels for local and regional food system stakeholders, this really brought everyone together. So folks ranging from CSAs to farmers markets to farm to institution projects, food hubs, ghost kitchens, even local fishing operations came together. And throughout the pandemic, they were working together to produce sector snapshots on what were the challenges people were seeing in real time, what pivots were they making, and what technical assistance needs do they need. And so those documents were getting posted to the website. We were also producing webinars to provide technical assistance and highlight best practices, and also really, connect people to other stakeholders in the field. That project is still active. It's now transitioning into a recovery and resilience phase, but now we're working on building really a network of networks of food system stakeholders and continuing to grow collaboration and strategic activity. We're also developing a resilience playbook so we can stay ready for the next disruption, and also thinking a lot about how to better promote data and metrics in the local and regional food system sector. Next slide. As I mentioned, we also are a researcher and data provider. A couple quick things that I think might be of interest to this group is, one, we are actively working with universities and nonprofit partners to enter into cooperative agreements to do research that really has practical applications in the field. So one example is we partnered with Cornell University's Small Farm Program to research factors affecting the commercial viability of urban agriculture practices. We are now working to turn those findings into a curriculum for urban agriculture stakeholders so we can promote, policies that are more supportive, really what makes these operations viable and providing that kind of, business technical assistance as well. We also have a local food directories. This is, I think, really beneficial, and from the producer standpoint, in that you can connect to, other operations near you, identify, what best practices, help build your network. And so that directory includes stakeholders from agritourism operations, which is brand new, to who has farm stands, food hubs, CSAs, and more. So highly recommend checking out the local food directories. And next slide. And the last research data project I wanted to mention out there is, one of the things I mentioned is that we are a funder, and we want to make sure that our funding resources really are available to support folks. Also those who have been underserved. And so right now we've entered into a project with both Florida AMU and the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, two historically Black colleges. And it's focusing on really evaluating what the barriers are to folks accessing our grant opportunities. And so the first year is really going to focus on data collection and synthesis, and then the year 2 is really going to focus on outreach, development, materials. And while the two colleges that we're working with are historically Black colleges and universities, this project is really designed to support Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And so this is one that I have the link on the slide, but this is something, if you're interested, either as an affiliate of a college, or if you're a producer who wants to make sure that you're served and your voice is heard, you can go online and get connected to that program. Next slide. I'm just going to skim through this one really quickly, but this is, Kier already mentioned this. This is the Meat and Poultry Processing Technical Assistance Project. I just simply wanted to mention this project because it is a really new development for us. And so this can provide technical assistance to folks, that one-on-one technical assistance that we're often lacking. And there are two organizations that are tribal led that I think will be a great resource. So if you're, this could be a big operation, small operation, this technical assistance network is really there to support folks on the ground. And I'm getting close to time, so I'm going to try to run through these really quick. Next slide. Just a quick mention, we also, we have success stories on our website. We also provide design support. So if folks are interested in developing a food hub or a farmer's market, we have architects on staff that they can consult. That's a resource folks often aren't familiar with at AMS. So just wanted to make a mention of that. Next slide. And then I wanted to mention we have quite a number of funding programs to support direct marketing programs or local and regional food systems development. We have our farmers market promotion program, our local food promotion program, which is really focused more on intermediaries or funding for food hubs, and then regional food systems partnership program, which is really designed to bring public and private partners together to plan for their food system. And this can support both planning projects and then also implementation as well. Next slide. And then I'll mention two more things and wrap it up. One thing I did want to mention as part of the food systems transformation framework, which Secretary Vilsack announced back in June, he did mention that we'll be developing regional food business centers. The full details of this program have not yet been announced, but just want to mention this, as these are going to be important centers that can provide, on the ground support for in coordination with producers and other agencies providing technical assistance and capacity building to producers. We will be working with a multitude of organizations through that and really focusing on how we can get folks the services to take their business to the next level. So stay tuned for more information there. And the last thing that I will mention is that AMS, in addition to its grant programs, next slide, we also purchase food through our commodity procurement program. And the two programs that you may have been heard of, and I'm happy to provide more information in the Q&A, is our Local Food Purchase Assistance Cooperative Agreement and our Local Food for Schools Cooperative Agreement. The major difference between these programs is for the Local Food Purchase Assistance Cooperative Agreement. We have been able to enter into agreements with tribes directly, where in the Local Food for Schools, we are only able to go through states entities, but both of these programs, they make, the Local Food Purchase Assistance makes $400 million available, and the Local Food for Schools makes $200 million available. And the bulk of this money is really intended to support purchases from local producers and those that have historically been underserved. So can provide more information in the Q&A, but these are really good opportunities. We have entered into these cooperative agreements to make the purchasing process simpler and to really make sure that we are able to purchase more product from those that the programs really aim to serve. So the last slide is just my contact information. If you have questions about any of the USDA AMS programs, I'm happy to answer those, and feel free to reach out at any time. Thanks.
Thank you, Juliana. RD and AMS are joined at the hip through something called the Local Ag Market Program. Juliana mentioned many of those programs. One of those programs is administered under LAMP, is administered by Rural Development's the Value Added Producer Grant. So that's a segue into our next speaker, Tracy Smith from Rural Development Rural Business Cooperative Service. You are next.
Well, hello, thank you for having me today. I am going to share just a little bit about what rural development does and how we may be able to assist you. Rural development is one of 8 mission areas within the U.S. Department of Agriculture. We deliver over 40 programs within our 3 agencies. We have the Rural Housing Service, the Rural Business Service, and the Rural Utility Service. We provide loans, grants, and loan guarantees to help create jobs and support economic development in the rural areas. Some of the things that we can assist with would be housing, healthcare, first responder services and equipment, water, electric, and telecommunications infrastructure. So we're kind of all over the board. We're a unique agency. It is often said that we could build a community from the ground up because of all the different programs that we have. So we always try and make people aware of all of that. We usually invest about $50 billion annually. So it's a significant program. Next slide, please. Actually, next slide. I missed one on you. Thank you. We deliver these programs through 47 state offices and about 400 area offices. That is to say that we have staff in your state, and we are here to help you and would love to assist you in any way that we can. So please make sure that you reach out to us anytime you're looking at funding a project and see if there's a way that we can help you. Next slide, please. I'm here representing the rural business and cooperative programs. We have over 20 programs that we deliver through that particular group. This is about 10 of them, and I'm going to speak to you about a few of them today, the ones that we thought would be most relevant to this group. Next slide, please. The very first one, and you've heard it mentioned either regarding our program specifically or just in context of value-added products, but we have a value-added producer grant. It's a grant that is available for individuals or entities that are agriculture producers. So if someone is involved in the planting, growing, and harvesting of an ag commodity, that entity can come to us for a value-added producer grant. Its intent is to aid the ag producers in adding activities related to processing and marketing new projects. We have two types of these grants. One is a planning grant, and that grant can be used to assist with having a feasibility study done or a business plan, marketing plan. And there's a $75,000 max on those grants. We also have a working capital grant that can go up to $250,000. And that is for doing the activities that is producing this value added product. So it's to pay the person's wages that are standing on the line creating that product, or to purchase inventory and supplies for bottling or packaging, things like that. Sometimes entities will come and get a planning grant first, and then once they have possession of that feasibility study or business plan, then they come in the next year and go for the grant for the $250,000. And that's up to that amount. So it's been a very helpful and useful program to many entities around the country. In order to be eligible, you just have to be an independent producer or a group of producers. And I just want to point out that the grant funds cannot be used to purchase equipment or real estate. This is, those grants just can't be used for that. We do have loan programs that can be used in conjunction with it, or you can finance by yourself or get a loan from a bank or something, but the actual purchase of equipment is not eligible, and that's often confused. So next slide, please. I just want to give you an example. So it's very easy to think of, turning grapes into wine or tomatoes into salsa. Some people have taken corn and made into hand sanitizer. This particular screen that I have here is two gals that put together this company, and they're called Simple Goodness Sisters. And if you were to search on them, you would be able to find a video that was made. But they grow stuff like blueberries and lavender, rhubarb, sage. They take those plants and they make them into syrups. And then they take the syrup and they use it for things like soda or cocktails, milkshakes, and other similar treats. So they've created a business wherein they use their syrups for what they call a garden to glass experience. So I think it's a pretty cool and innovative way and something different to show you that this program can be used for a broad spectrum of different types of projects. Next slide, please. Another grant that they wanted me to talk to you about today is the Socially Disadvantaged Group Grant. And this is a grant that provides technical assistance for entities seeking or desiring to either establish a cooperative business or expand a cooperative business. So business doesn't get the money directly. What they get is assistance from the entity that gets this grant. So this particular grant is for assistance to socially disadvantaged groups in rural areas. They usually work through cooperative development centers or cooperatives themselves. It's $175,000 maximum grant. And those cooperative development centers then help provide the technical assistance to help these businesses start in their cooperative manner. There's a good example of it here on the next slide, please. So the Northwest Cooperative Development Center got one of these socially disadvantaged group grants, and they have provided 20-some different cooperatives that are either starting or expanding with assistance. And I was able to find 3 different specific ones that I think will demonstrate well here. So the Quinault Nation Shared Services Cooperative received the technical assistance from the Northwest Cooperative Development Center to help guide them through determining the financial feasibility, access to new markets, business planning, and governing practices for their organization as they got started. The Rest Chicks Fresh Egg Cooperative was provided technical assistance on strategic planning and developing policies within their organization, which included quality standards. And then the Spokane Tribe Food Truck Co-op created a cooperative framework to facilitate entry for new African American member owners of this cooperative that they were creating there. So it's, though the money doesn't go directly to the cooperatives, it is certainly helpful in having them start their businesses and expand. And some of the other entities here today mentioned that they also help with cooperatives. We in our organization have an entire staff devoted to cooperatives. So if you are interested in that mode of business, then there are many different resources for you out there. Next slide, please. This is just to demonstrate that one of the facilities that we have financed through the years is that Alaska Cooperative Development Program. They have received rural cooperative development grants from our agency in the past, and they too are there to help with entities that are forming cooperatives. Next slide, please. The last specific program I want to talk to you about is the Rural Business Development Grant. This one's a little different in that the eligible entities to receive this grant are state or local governments, federally recognized tribes, nonprofit corporations, communities, institutions of higher education, and also rural cooperatives. This program is also intended to provide technical assistance and training for small businesses, and it's any type of business they could be helping. It assists with economic development planning and or indirect financing and expansion. These grant funds do not go directly to private businesses. They go to entities to help spur business in a rural area. There's no maximum grant amount. The smaller requests get higher scores, and this is a competitive grant process, so score does matter. I have an example for you. So, well, let me show you some of the eligible uses are training and technical assistance, business incubators, which can help multiple businesses get going, capitalization of revolving loan funds, which are useful in helping finance businesses as they get started, and then some distance learning. Next slide, please. So this is just another example of a grant, and this is a grant that the entity, the city of Selma, got a grant to establish a revolving loan fund that they then use to purchase equipment for a business, and then the business paid them lease payments until that amount was paid off. Then the city of Selma takes the money that is paid back to them through these lease payments and either purchases additional equipment for a different business that will lease the equipment, or it can be loans, which work just exactly the same as the leases. You get a loan, as the business pays the loan back, then the city makes a loan to a new business, and it helps make monies available for those small businesses. Next slide, please. This is just showing you 3 other types of relending programs that we can assist with. Some come with technical assistance grants and some do not. They are throughout the country. So wherever you are, you can find out what revolving loan funds exist in your area and get some contact information from our agency and reach out to them for assistance with financing your business. Next slide, please. This is just a general tips for accessing USDA programs slide that you can look at later, just things to help you. Next slide, please. I know I'm out of time. This is some links that I encourage you to use. We have 40 some programs. It's very difficult just within our agency to figure out which is the best one for you. So I would always recommend to you that you contact your local state office and reach out to them. They can tell you about local resources that they're aware of as well. And if nothing else, you have my contact information. You are more than welcome to call me and I will put you in contact with the appropriate people based upon your program that you're seeking, your project, and where you're located. Next slide, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm going to add two things, and we'll hear from Nick. One, there is a set aside for tribes in the Rural Business Development Grant Program. Just so folks know, that's usually about $4 million a year based on annual appropriations. So there's money in the Rural Business Development Grant Program for tribes specifically. You can find out about that through your state office. And when we say state office for rural development, that doesn't mean a state government. Those are USDA rural development staff that are just located and have responsibilities for our programs throughout that state jurisdictional area. So you'll learn more about RD's program, specifically RBDG, in our next webinar where we talk about tourism, because it can be used for those types of programs as well. So thanks for joining, Tracy from Memphis. Next up, we're going to hear from Nick Streff from NASS to talk about the ag survey. Quick commercial from Nick. You got about 5 minutes, Nick, so it doesn't have to be that quick. Thanks.
Okay, all right. Thanks, everyone. Hello, my name is Nick Streff. I'm the Regional Director for the Northern Plains region of NASS. So the NASS is the National Agricultural Statistics Service. I cover the states of North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Kansas. And one thing about NASS is we're the main data collection arm for the USDA. Lots of other agencies collect data, but when it comes to production agriculture, so cattle inventory, crop yields, economic data, profitability, expenses, things like that, NASS is normally the one who collects that data from the farmers and ranchers, and then we publish it, and it's used for all kinds of types of different decisions throughout local, state, federal governments, and even individual producers as well. Well, one of our biggest data collection undertakings is the Census of Agriculture. We do it every 5 years, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. So the Census of Agriculture, it's the most complete data set available. The last one we did was in 2017, so that data is getting a little bit dated, but it's the only source of uniform information across all of the counties, all of the states within the US and some of our US outlying areas. We have information on demographics, producer characteristics, production practices, income expenses. You admit there's probably a question in the census that we're already trying to look at it and quantify that data for you. So it's a very important data set. Next slide, please. So NASS conducts the Census of Ag, as I mentioned already, in all 50 states, Puerto Rico, Guam, the Virgin Islands, and the other outlying areas of the United States. And when you think about it, when we complete this whole data set, that's data on more than 3,000 US counties and 30,000 zip codes. So I'm going to kind of talk about how we kind of slice that data up and really work into it. And so we can really get to a very detailed level that hopefully at some point in time, you can maybe put in your grant applications or some other form like that. So next slide, please. So we got to talk about who's going to be in the Census of Agriculture. Well, the farm definition, and this is a kind of in US law, it's any place from which at least $1,000 of agricultural products were produced and sold or normally would have been sold during the census year. So our census year this year is the year for 2022. So at the end of this year is when the census forms will go out. And so anybody who has at least $1,000 value of sales or would have, we're hoping to include them in the census. So this means, whether you're a large farm, small farm, it even can be if you're only in part of USDA programs such as CRP or something like that, there's a very good chance you're going to meet that $1,000 threshold. Next slide, please. So when we think about the census as being your voice, so the data that we have from the past census of agricultures we've done every 5 years has really helped determine where transportation locations are going to be, marketing locations, where farm service programs are going to be made available or policies are there. But the important part is knowing that when the producers take the time, the farmers and ranchers take the time to give us this information, it's important to know that it's their information they're sharing so they can use it for decision-making down the road. And people and businesses and governments that help them down the road can rely on this data to assist them. Next slide, please. So when you think about your future, and in this case, if we think about some of the ag tourism or value-added agriculture that other folks have noted, and I want to just thank here and Carly for giving a very good representative of how Census of Agriculture data has helped them. Those were the first two speakers. Just to note that the Census of Agriculture is used for all types of different data sets. If you're looking to stand up a meat processing facility, NAS isn't going to help you stand it up, but maybe it's NAS data or that Census of Agriculture data that you can look around your county area and say, there's availability of beef in this county, or goats, or sheep, or hogs, or whatever you want to process in that facility. You can go to the Census of Agriculture and see that. If you want to look at ag tourism dollars, that is tables 6 and 7 in the Census of Agriculture. And you can go across that, look at every state, and then flip back and even look at the county level data that's available for that. So once again, NAS can't really write the grants, or NAS can't really help the producers get there all the way, but from the technical assistance that other folks have already mentioned today, and also from that census data set, it provides that really clear county level data that you could hopefully use in your process. Next slide. So what we're asking for is, if you happen to get a census form this year, that you take the opportunity to respond, to go through the form. It is long, it may take a while, but when we're looking at income, when we're looking at expenses, all those different pieces, that's what we're looking for. And the census is required by law. So that's the one form that NAS does. That's required by law. Next slide, please, and I'll finish up. Oh, one more, please. Thank you. Okay, so this is the website to look at that census data. There's lots of different forms out there. And if we go one more slide, I do want to note that the Census of Agriculture, while I already mentioned county level data, state level data, when we finish with the census, we also do special tabulation. So we tabulate the census data based on congressional district. We have an American Indian Reservation publication we put out, and we also calculate it based on watershed. So we know that counties don't always fit, so we put it together in these other data sets as well. So with that, the next slide, I believe, has our timeline on it. The census mailouts in November. The deadline to fill it out is February 6th, and we will do some follow-up phone calls if we don't hear from you. So if you're a producer, please take the time to fill it out. If you work with producers, please do your part and maybe help us encourage response later this fall. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Nick. The Census of Ag is a huge deal, and we wanted to make sure we mentioned it on each of the webinars throughout this series. So we appreciate NAS being on, and we encourage everyone to get involved. You got a couple months before those forms come out, and look for them and fill them out when you get them. So Bianca, we're a little bit over time, but we want to transition into questions and answers. So can you explain how folks can ask their questions?
Yeah, so we can have you either raise your hand and we can allow you to speak, or you can put your questions in the Q&A or in the chat. So we'll take the next few minutes, and then Ted, you can take the lead on the questions.
Yeah, did you see any in the chat that we didn't get to? I saw we were responding to folks' questions. Do you want to just say about the recordings? I actually have a couple questions if no one raises their hands to get things started, but looks like we got one hand up.
Let's see here, there's one.
You see it, Bianca, or do you want
Yeah.
me to? Okay.
Kanani? You can go ahead and speak if you take yourself off mute.
Kanani, can you hear us, and can you ask your question?
You're on mute, Kanani.
Looks like the hand is back down.
Okay.
Could have been a fake out.
Yeah.
Let me ask this question of our external folks first, and internal. We tried throughout this webinar series, the first one on ag production, second one on value ag, the third one will be on ag tourism, to give folks a survey of many of the resources out there and the organizations that are active in the field. But we didn't get to everybody. It's impossible to have panelists from all the organizations. So if someone from NAF or IAC or Indigenous Food and Ag Initiative, could you talk about some of the other organizations and tribes that are active in this space that can also provide resources? And I guess I'll steer it just to make it easier on us here.
Can you rephrase the question? I could take that in many different ways, Ted.
I'm thinking of folks like First Nations Development Institute, other Native nonprofits and organizations that are active in this space that folks might not be aware of that we could.
Sure. Well, yeah. So First Nations, longtime partner on different fronts, and yeah, they have a host of different types of grant opportunities, and I would definitely recommend taking a look there. There's definitely, depending on the interests, a whole variety of more localized efforts. I'm thinking up in the Great Lakes region, Dream of Wild Health provides some really amazing resources and trainings and opportunities. There's some really great partners at University of Arizona in the federally recognized tribal extension program down there, and in Nevada as well. And depending on where you're at, some great state-based resources that can help to navigate opportunities. So I definitely would check in with Cooperative Extension, and then, FERTEP, again, federally recognized tribal extension program, is not as extensive as I think any of us would want it to be. We're definitely hoping to help to build, more and more of that network, but there's some great resources out there. Again, need to check more locally on that front.
Ted, I'll jump in and mention from a policy perspective some of the partner organizations that we work with when it comes to really taking a look at internal tribal policies and also external policies that can be influential for Indian country agriculture, in addition to the Native American Farm Bill Coalition. We also work with the Intertribal Buffalo Council and then the Intertribal Timber Council. And so those can be really good resources for subject matter specific opportunities with regards to bison and also forest management.
Sandy, anyone top of mind that we maybe have missed?
Yeah, thanks, Ted. I really just want to direct everyone to our website, because on our website, we list every grantee with a short summary of what their project is about, and with links to access their resources, their web pages. And so once awards are announced, all of the grantees go onto our website. So please go there and reach out to everybody.
Thank you. Bianca, any questions in the chat?
We have one question, and that question was, is there a definition for agritourism that is used by Indian country providers?
That's a tough question. I'm not aware of a definition. Ayanta might be. I can tell you what I think about it colloquially, but I don't know if that's helpful or not. Anybody?
Yeah, we don't have a definition for that.
So to clarify, the question is around a definition for agritourism in Indian country. Yeah, so I mean, on how ISC would approach that is really taking the guidance of goals and objectives of that particular tribal community, and really seeking to design strategies that are inclined towards the state of objectives there. And so yeah, we really take a localized approach, and that's a great question in general, though, to kind of formulate something that can be a bit more of a unifier. But there's also that importance of kind of like maintaining that decentralization to lean into tribal sovereignty and really focus in on the intricacies of a particular community.
Thank you, Kara.
I don't see any more questions. Not in the Q&A.
Appreciate that, Kelly. You put in some web link as well regarding that question. I'll ask one more question, and then maybe we can wrap up. It's about matching funds at rural development. Some of our programs require matching funds, some don't. The value-added producer grant has one of the heavier match requirements at RD, where it's $1 for dollar. So there's resources out there, including the Native American Ag Fund, that can help with that. But either our panelists or our program folks, is there something you want to add about resources for getting those matching funds for federal grants and for USDA specifically?
So Ted, one of the things that the Native Farm Bill Coalition advocates for is more flexibility for that match. And in the 2018 Farm Bill, we saw some success in some programs authorizing the use of other federal funds to serve as that match. And that can be really critical for tribal communities, especially as we're receiving self-governance funds through BIA or through other resources from the federal government in order to address some agriculture or land management considerations that can be a good fit for those matches. And so that's something that we would be hopeful would be expanded through Farm Bill 2023, assuming that's when we would get that one passed. But I did want to point that out. There may be some opportunities to leverage federal funds, whereas otherwise that would have been previously excluded.
I can give an AMS perspective. Similar to rural development, we do have match requirements for many of our programs. For the three programs that I mentioned, the farmers market promotion and the local food promotion, there's a 25% match requirement, but it can be cash or in kind. So if you have volunteer support that's going towards the grant, that can be applied. But for our regional food system partnership grant, that is a cash match. I will say we are well aware of the concerns that people have raised around match and the accessibility of grants. That's definitely something we're having internal conversations about. Those match requirements for many of our programs are written into the legislative authority. So there is, further work that would need to be done. But we are having also informal conversations. There's nothing concrete yet with funders, looking at where we could potentially partner better with private funders to also support folks in, being able to cover that match as well.
Sandy, I'll give you the last word. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I'm pretty sure some past awardees have used NAF funding for matching funds for RD programs specifically. Is that true? Is that an eligible use if they're an eligible applicant?
Yes, absolutely. We welcome that. We welcome that type of application in our annual RFA. And so be looking for our RFA to come out next year. And we do have several webinars that we provide during RFA time for questions and answers, and we can help guide you and answer those questions if you are interested in an application for match with an RD program.
Thank you. Bianca, last call for questions.
Yeah, there's no more none in the Q&A or the chat. So
well, we're coming up on 90 minutes then. So I wanted to
Yeah.
thank our panelists and participants. I wanted to thank Ayanta again for hosting our presentation. We do have another webinar coming up. I believe the date is August 9th. Is that right?
yes, correct.
That'll be the third and final webinar we're doing in this webinar series with Ayanta. That one, as mentioned, is going to focus on agritourism and as a business and economic enterprise of tribes or tribal organizations. So I also wanted to thank Melissa Sturdivant and Chris DeFries, who are on from our team. They've helped immensely with getting folks together for this webinar. So thanks, Melissa and Chris. Bianca, I'll give you the last word to close things out.
All right, thank you, Ted, and all the presenters today. We appreciate your time. I just do want to let the attendees know that there is the International Workshop on Agritourism that will take place in Vermont, August 30th through September 1st. You can visit their website at agritourismworkshop.com for more information. We will be emailing the video link for this presentation as well as the PowerPoint slides to all registrants of this session. Please check out IENTA's website at ienta.org/webinar for future webinars. If you are not a member of IENTA and would like to be, please contact Gail Shehak, our Tribal Relations and Outreach Manager, and you can do so by visiting our website at ienta.org. Again, we appreciate you all being here today and have a great day. Thank you.